Are we ready to start?
Yep.
Okay, can you please start recording? Yeah, it's recording. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Welcome back to another episode of Theory of Everything, a podcast of teen activism and insight. Today's episode number 2, will be covering moral dilemmas and ethics. Essentially, today we'll be talking about philosophy and different scenarios where you're going to have to think about different moral outcomes and what the best solution is to a given scenario. So, I would like to introduce our guest star today, Kaushik Vejju.
Hello everyone, my name is Kaushik. I'm a senior at Monroe Township High School, and some of my hobbies include running, drawing, and reading. Next year, I'll be attending a four-year university to study computer science, and I would like to thank Dharsan and Tejesh for having me today.
Yep, no problem, Kaushik. And before we get into the topic of this podcast, I want to make sure everybody knows that all of our opinions are our own opinions. This podcast is about opinions based. It's not fact based. It's opinion based. And I want everybody to know that we are neutral. And if we say anything offensive, just know that it's not meant to be offensive. We're just trying to be neutral and try to make everybody feel like they could belong here and can listen to this podcast freely. And if you would like to share any of your own opinions, just talk to us after the podcast. And yeah, let's get right into the podcast. So we're going to start off this podcast by talking about fate versus free will. So philosophers and religious figures have been having the fate versus free will debate for centuries. On one hand, there's those who believe in fate. This group includes many religious people. If you believe in God, and then you likely believe that God is responsible for the creation of the universe and all of the happenings within it. Everything that happens in every person's life is God's will. Also in this category, there are non-religious people who don't necessarily believe in God, but they believe in an ordered universe, karma, and destiny. Darshan, how about you explain free will now?
Yeah, sure. So on the other hand, there's the one group that you just said that believes in fate, but the other group believes in free will. Free will people, they essentially believe that every individual is entirely responsible for everything that happens in his or her own life. They don't believe in God or destiny, and they believe that life is random, and we all have the choice and the ability to determine the outcome of our life. And those are the two extremes of the spectrum. You have the free will people and you have the fate people. And then in the middle, there's the neutral people where they believe that our lives are a combination of both fate and free will. They believe in fate, which, as Tejesh said, is God, destiny, and the universe. And they believe that those three things may be present in our lives, but ultimately we also have to utilize our own free will, the ability to make choices and decide how our life will become and determine the outcome of our life. So they believe that there's a combination of both the supernatural and the ability to make a choice about your own life. And these people who are religious, but they don't devote everything to God, may fall in this middle category. So, Kaushik, where do you think you stand on the spectrum between fate, neutral, and free will? What do you believe in?
Well, Darshan, I believe that I'm in the middle, but I'm leaning more towards the idea of free will. And I think that the only thing that is predetermined in our life is the idea of death. We're all bound to die at some point in our lives. But it's what we do up until our death that is entirely determined by free will. Of course, when we're younger, we really don't have a sense of the world around us. So much of our actions are guided by our parents and other authoritative figures. But when we're in our teens and adult years, we're more conscious of our surroundings and we can use any opportunity presented to us and guide our actions by our own self-decisions. So that is entirely free will. And I think that there's a certain degree of luck in the circumstances we are born into. For example, one individual can be born into a poor slum in a third world country, and one individual can be born into a very rich family. And there are different circumstances, but it's about how we use our circumstances and the opportunities presented to us that determine our fate in our lives. So that's my opinion on the debate. Oh, well, on this topic.
Wow, that's an excellent response, Kaushik. I'll go next. Definitely fall into the same category as Kaushik does. I would consider myself to be a religious person. But I also believe that our own actions determine what our future would be like. but God can lead me into the right directions. But ultimately, I would decide my own future with my own actions, and the decisions I make may be influenced by my belief in God. And yeah, just like Kaushik said, the only thing predetermined in life is death. So yeah, that's what I believe in. How about you, Darshan?
I feel like those are both unique and interesting perspectives, but the place I stand on that spectrum is more towards fate, but also kind of neutral. So I believe that everything that happens was meant to happen in a way, whether it be supernatural or just by the way the molecules and the physics of our bodies are. There's just a certain trend of how these actions are going to occur. It revolves around the scientific concepts of entropy and enthalpy and how entropy and always increases. So I believe that certain actions were meant to happen no matter what. And this may be supernatural or just maybe how the universe conducts itself. But I feel like in certain societal standards, we do have free will in the ability to choose our career outcome, choose where we want to go to school, stuff like these. These are like minor things that you do have the ability to choose. But I would say like major events in your life, such as death, like you said, or maybe like meeting somebody, that may be more fate than you choosing to go after that action. So there's a mixture of both, but I lean more towards fate.
All right. All right. So yeah, as everybody can see, all of us have different and similar aspects and categories where we fall in for the fate versus free will debate. But now we're going to get into discussion scenarios. Basically, in the discussion scenarios, we discuss about various moral and ethical scenarios where we each give our own unique answer on what happens in each scenario. So we're going to start off with the first one. Okay, so Tom is part of a group of ecologists who live in a remote stretch of the jungle. The entire group, which includes 8 children, has been taken hostage by a group of paramilitary terrorists. One of the terrorists takes a liking to Tom. He informs Tom that his leader intends to kill him and the rest of the hostages the following morning. He is willing to help Tom and the children escape, but as an act of good faith, he wants Tom to torture and kill one of his fellow hostages, whom he does not like. If Tom refuses his offer, all the hostages, including the children and Tom, will die. If he accepts the offer, then the others will die in the morning, but Tom and the 8 children can escape. Should Tom torture and kill one of his fellow hostages in order to escape from the terrorists and save the lives of the 8 children? Kaushik, why don't you go first?
Yeah, this is definitely a challenging question, and I must say that I would, yes, I would torture and kill one of the fellow hostages to save the children. And while this may seem very dark, I think that ultimately comes down to how many lives you can save. If you're if you refuse to offer, then you're putting your life and the children and the hostages all in danger, and all of you are going to die. But if you can torture one hostage and save the lives of 8 children, I think that sort of balances out the cost of killing that hostage. And these 8 children, they have families and they have futures ahead of them. And I think that if you're not able to save these children, it would not be a good act. So I think morally, it would be correct to maybe torture one of the hostages and save these children and yourself.
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, Kaushik. And after you saying that, I definitely would do the same thing. Yes, it's extremely cruel to torture one child, but the final mission is to save as many children as possible. And even if it's just 8 children out of the whole group, it'll still be worth it. Yeah, Darshan, what do you think?
So yeah, so again, this scenario has two options. One option is where everybody dies, and the other option is where you live and you save 8 other children. But the downside to that is that you have to torture somebody else. And now, as much as this scenario is not realistic at all, because I don't see this happening a lot, I still believe that we should torture the other innocent person, even though that's not what's acceptable by society. But if you don't do it, then everybody will die. But if you do it, you will save 8 children, like they said, who have futures, who have aspirations and dreams, and you could save yourself, because most people in this life just want to live, and your primal instincts are always to survive. So in the time when you're presented with the scenario, most people would choose to torture that innocent person so that they can live and 8 other children could live. Even though when you're looking at it from a third person's perspective, it seems wrong to torture another person. But when you're looking at it holistically as a whole, that seems like the most viable option.
Yeah, I feel like all of our perspectives made sense and it was logical. But again, everything's opinion based. Everybody else might have different opinions. So if you had different opinions on that scenario, you can talk to us after the show. So let's go on to the next scenario. You are an eyewitness to a crime. A man has robbed a bank, but instead of keeping the money for himself, he donates it to a poor orphanage that can now afford to feed, clothe, and care for its children. You know who committed the crime. If you go to the authorities with the information, there's a good chance the money will be returned to the bank, leaving a lot of kids in need. What do you do? So let's start off with Kaushik once again.
I feel that this question is a bit easier to answer compared to the other one. I think I would do is that I would let the bank know that this person stole the money, because obviously stealing money is a crime. But I would ensure that the bank does donate money to these children in need, because ultimately the robber was doing a good deed. He was giving money to these children, but he did it through a poor mechanism. He stole to do that. So I think that the robber should deserve a smaller sentence in jail or wherever he goes to. And then the bank should go about donating the money to the children, because ultimately that is the most morally correct thing to do.
Yeah, I see what you're saying, Kaushik. For me, I would report to the authorities that the man has robbed the bank because he stole from hardworking individuals that, earned their money fairly. However, I would definitely try my best to convince the local police department to donate to these children once again so that they have everything that they had just received and it's not suddenly just taken away. Also, I believe the robber should receive a lesser sentence due to the fact that he used the money for unselfish reasons and donated it to a poor orphanage. How are you? What do you think, Darshan?
So I'm gonna have to disagree with both of you on this one. I feel like we shouldn't tell the authorities about the robber, because if you think about it, what you guys are saying is that we should tell the authorities, give the robber a lesser sentence, and then find a way to get that money back to the orphanage. But I feel like in modern society, people won't just be that willing to give away money, especially banks that are companies. They can't afford to give away a lot of money to orphanages. Maybe they can give a small amount of money, but definitely not the amount that the robber had stolen. So I feel like if you do report the robber, these children who have very poor lives will not be getting all of the resources that you want them to have. So I feel like although robbery is completely wrong and I don't condone it, I feel like in this scenario, the person who was robbing was of good faith. He was a good person. He was robbing to help these children in need because they don't have the same resources as the rest of us in society. So I don't know. On this one, I feel like you should just pretend that you didn't see anything and just let the children receive the money and the resources that they need to live.
Okay. I definitely respect your opinion, Darshan. Again, all of us, as you can see, everybody can have different opinions and answers, and it's completely fine because as long as you have nice reasons to go along with it, your opinion will always be respected. So let's go on to the third scenario now. You have a job as a network administrator for a company that also employs your best friend's husband. One day, your best friend's husband sends you a message asking you to release an email from quarantine. This email requires you to open the email, at which point you discover that it's correspondence between the guy and his secret lover. After releasing the email, you found yourself in a pickle. Your instinct is to tell your best friend about his husband's infidelities, but the contents of the company email is against company policy and you could lose your job. Once it becomes a plan with that your best friend has found out about his cheating husband through a company email, all trials will be inevitably lead to you as the leak. Do you tell him about the indiscretion? Kaushik, what do you think?
Yeah, so I wouldn't be a best friend to this person if I was not loyal or truthful to him. And it's very clear that my best it's very clear that my best friend's husband is cheating on him. So I don't want my best friend to go through that pain and knowing that living their life, not knowing that their husband is directly cheating on them. So I definitely inform my best friend. And although I do lose my job, I'm still loyal to my best friend. I think that friendships are more important than jobs or any other possession because friendship is something that you can have for your entire life. And with a job, I can get a new one. If I'm able to hack into the company's files and everything, I must have some sort of skill, right? So I can use my skill and find another job. But yeah, ultimately it comes down to loyalty. And I would rather be loyal to my best friend rather than committing myself so much to a job where I forget about the relationships where I have with the human being. So that's where I lie.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Kaushik. I feel like one day of misery does not equate to years of unloyalty from another human being. I would definitely tell my best friend because you only have one best friend and you have to cherish them forever. So I would definitely tell my best friend about the cheating incident. I wouldn't want them to go through that pain for their whole lives. Not knowing how many times they've done it before and how many times they could have done it in the past. That's definitely something I would tell them. And yeah, as you said before, jobs are temporary. You can always find a new job with the skills that you have pertaining to yourself. And yeah, at the end of it, I would definitely tell them get fired and then find a new job. What do you think, Darshan?
Well, I kind of think something along those lines. Essentially, what you guys are saying is that we should forfeit our job to make sure that our best friend's happy and that we show some our loyalty to our best friend. And I guess that's kind of a hard scenario because you have to pick between your best friend and your job. And I feel like if you stay with your job and your best friend doesn't find out, I feel like everything will be okay because one, you have your job, and two, your best friend doesn't know about her husband's infidelities. So she will continue to live happily because once she does find out, she will not be as happy as she was before. But again, I feel when you're looking at fate versus free will and you're thinking about what your choices are in life, I feel like you should take the free will in this scenario and tell your best friend because that's just what the right thing to do is. And even if you have to give up your job for it, I feel like in the long run, you'll feel better about yourself and you'll feel less guilty for opening up and telling them the truth.
Yeah,
Yeah, I definitely see where you're coming from, Darshan. What are you saying, Kaushik?
sorry about that, Tejesh. Yeah, I clearly agree with your opinion, Darshan. It's I really like the idea you brought up about the long run because in the short run, you may feel that, oh my God, like, did I really tell my best friend about the cheating? I feel so bad for them. But by telling them, you're kind of releasing a burden, that burden that, you know that they're being cheated on. So I think you brought up an excellent point about that.
Yep. So that was an excellent scenario. Let's go on to another scenario. You're involved in a two-car crash on your way to work one morning in which you accidentally hit and kill a pedestrian. As you get out of the car, you are intercepted by a tearful woman who seems to think that she hit and killed the pedestrian. You're not sure why she thinks she hit this person, but she is convinced. There's only you, the woman, and the person you hit on the road. There are no witnesses. You know whoever is deemed responsible will probably be sent to jail. What do you do? So in this scenario, there are two options, right? There are two scenarios, or there are two outcomes. Either you take the blame for the crime and you know that you're the one who did it, and you live with that guilt for the rest of your life, but you don't go to jail and the woman goes to jail and she also thinks that she deserves to go to jail. That's one option. The other option is that you take the blame. So if you take the blame, there's no guilt involving this. You go to prison for your own crime because you know that you did it. I would fall into the category of taking the blame because honestly, for me, I feel like it's not right for someone else to take the blame for something you did. And imagine holding the weight of knowing that you killed something, but you never admitted it. Like, I just think it's wrong. I definitely believe in, punishment for your consequences. Doing something wrong means you have something wrong to do with yourselves as well. What do you think, Kaushik?
Yeah, so my brain would tell me, don't take the blame for the crime. If the woman thinks that she did it, she can take the blame. I can live freely in my life. My family doesn't have to be affected by this crime. But my heart would say, take the blame for it. And I think in this scenario, I'd go with my heart because, like you said, Tejesh, the burden of knowing that you killed someone and not telling anyone about that is a huge burden. And if you're not able to let go of that burden for the rest of your life, it's mentally damaging. It's the death of an individual. It's not a trivial matter. It's a very serious matter. So for that reason, I would definitely take the blame for it, even though my family will be affected, even though if I'll be arrested. The burden of knowing that I killed someone is taken off, and I can accept that I'm responsible for this crime. And yeah, that's exactly how I feel about this scenario.
Yeah, so building off of what Kaushik just said, that burden is not just that you killed a person and you aren't in jail for it. It's also that you're letting an innocent person that didn't do anything wrong go to jail for something that you did wrong, which is completely unfair. Even if you want to be selfish and just don't tell anyone about what you did so that you can live happily, there's somebody else, a whole other person with lives, a family, aspirations, and dreams that's sitting in jail, and they're wasting their life in jail because they think that they did a crime that they actually didn't do and you did. And so if you believe that you should just not tell anyone and just sit there and be happy while someone else is in jail, it's not the best thing to do, and it's morally incorrect because you're ruining another person's life just so that you can be happy. So like if you want to believe in morals, I feel like the best option here is to confess and take all the blame for yourself. So at least one other person could live happily.
Yep. I completely agree with both of your perspectives. Well, all of us took the morally right decision to, take yourselves into jail, admit to yourself that you're the one who killed the person. Don't want anybody else to take the blame for something that you did and receive the same extremely long consequences that you actually had to go through. So yeah, I definitely agree with both of you there. So our next scenario says your family is vacationing alone on a private stretch of a beach with no lifeguard. Your daughter and your niece, both 7 years old, are best friends and are eager to get into the body of water. You caution them to wait until the water comes down, but they defy you and sneak in anyway. You soon hear screams of distress and find both of them caught in a strong current. You're the only swimmer strong enough to save them, but you can't save only one. You can only save one at a time. Your niece is a very poor swimmer and likely won't make it much longer. But your daughter is a very strong swimmer and has a 50% chance of holding on long enough for you to come back for her. Who would you save first? So in this scenario, there are again two options. You either save your niece first, because your daughter has the skill to last much longer, 50% chance, or you save your daughter first because you can't bear the loss of losing a child of your own. So where I would stand on this, I would definitely save the niece first, because if my daughter has a a really strong chance to last longer in the sea while swimming, then I would save my niece first, because my niece, if I leave her alone, then and that's still your niece. It's not like, oh, like it's just a friend. It's still your niece. It's still blood family. So I would definitely save my niece first, because my daughter still has the skill to last longer. But then again, it is your daughter, so I can definitely see why people would, save their daughter first, because it is your own child that you made. So what do you think, Kaushik?
Josh, I might have to disagree with you with this one. This is certainly a very difficult decision, and I don't want anyone to feel that I'm a cruel individual. But I would say my daughter first for the reason that she is my daughter. I'm responsible for her birth, and she's my child. And the fact of losing a child is incredibly painful. And yes, my daughter's a strong swimmer, so maybe I won't need as much effort as saving her as I do for the niece. So if I can save my daughter in a relatively short amount of time, I should be able to save my niece much more easier because my daughter is a skilled swimmer and all. But yeah, I do understand your perspective that the niece is also a family relative. But as a father, I think if we were actually in this scenario, we would prioritize our most closest family relationship. So for that reason, I would save my daughter.
I kind of agree more with Tejesh on this one because I mean, I don't know. This is a tough scenario because you're picking between a daughter and you're picking between a niece. So it really comes down to what you value more. If you look at your daughter and the niece the same way, then it makes sense to go save the niece first because she's a poor swimmer and your daughter is a better swimmer. So if you treat them both the same, it makes sense to go for the niece. But if you value your daughter more than your niece, then I can understand why you would go after your daughter, even though she has a higher chance of living regardless, whether you help her or not, than the niece, because the niece is a poor swimmer. But in this situation, I might go for my niece because she probably has a very low chance of living if I don't go help her, but my daughter has a 50% chance. So I feel like it's a tough scenario, but I would go save the niece first. And then if I have time, I can save my daughter, who's already relatively skilled at swimming. So that might be the best option and the best outcome.
Yep. I definitely see the logic between both of your opinions. And Kaushik, I definitely see why you would save the daughter first. Like I said before, um, this is definitely a difficult scenario, and it really depends on what you think about, daughter, niece, family. So the next scenario is, imagine that a powerful alien were to visit Earth with the ability to eradicate war, famine, and suffering. The alien says that he will do this and turn the world into a utopia where humans will be happy and peaceful forevermore, but only if a price is paid. He demands a small child to be given to him so that he can perform hideous scientific experiments to do it, causing the child unimaginable pain. So, this scenario, you either, give a poor child to the alien so that they can, perform their experiments. But, no, the future looks bright for the rest of the world if you do that. But if, you don't give the child, the world will stay as it is. So personally, I feel like I know this is about to be cruel what I say. Sorry for everybody listening, but I would probably hand over the child because in my mind, I feel like there's at least one child in the world that is already going through a lot of pain and suffering, and I feel like their families aren't, you know, they're in poverty and they can't support them as much as they would originally. So I feel like I would hand over the child so that everybody for the rest of their lives and the future of the world would have a utopia to live in, and everything's peaceful and nobody has to go through famine and all of that. So I feel like one child sacrifice would be enough to cause the world a better future. What do you think, Kaushik?
But Tash, can I just add in one thing real quick?
Yeah,
So
sure.
there's a second part to this scenario where,
Right.
well, when you're giving the child up to the alien so that you can save the rest of the world, there's a second part of the scenario where the alien requires that you yourself have to inflict the torture upon the child. So what it's saying is if you torture a child, then the rest of the world will be cured of all of its problems. But if you choose not to torture the child, then the world will stay how it is. Would that change your decision, Tejesh, or do you still believe the same thing?
Personally, it wouldn't. Again, what I'm saying is extremely cruel, but personally, what I would say is, I would probably still, torture the child just because, I would pick a child that's already going through like an unimaginable come up, going through poverty, third world country maybe, all of that. So if I torture one child who's already going through pain originally in their living status, then yeah, I would still do that. What do you guys think?
Okay, so I'm taking the opposite side of Tejesh. I think that we don't need an alien to solve the world's problems. If we're going to give up a child and put this child in danger for an alien's experiments, that's not the right way to go about saving the world. I think for us to become a better society, we ourselves have to change and we ourselves have to become aware of the suffering and the famine and the war that's occurring in our world. And if we're aware of this and make policies that can fix these issues, then we as a human society have advanced. We don't need an alien to make a utopia. I think the idea of utopia is not idealistic. It's not going to happen. There's always going to be problems. But if we humans can become aware of our issues and work towards coming to a better society, I think that's what matters in the end. And I don't think that we need an alien to make this happen. So that's my viewpoint.
So I slightly disagree with Kaushik on this one, where he's saying that we can make policies and try to solve these issues on our own, but we've been doing that for many, many years. We've been doing it for over 100 years. We've made policies. There's governments actively trying to work on solving all of these issues, and we even have the United Nations. But there's not much progress being accomplished here because no matter what policies all of these governments make, there's still people in poverty and in famine and in war-torn countries that aren't receiving the help they should. So even if we try to push for more policies and efforts into bettering our world, we will not accomplish the same level of peace that we will if we do abide by these aliens' wishes. So if we do give up the child to the alien, and even if I would be the one that has to do these experiments on this child, I feel like I would do it because it saves so many other children, maybe billions and millions of children that are also facing maybe the same or worse scenarios or worse conditions in their day-to-day lives. So I feel like that one child that will be facing these experiments will go down as a hero for saving all of these millions of other children that go through poverty and famine every day in their lives. So I feel like the sacrifice of one child will save millions of children in the long run.
Yeah, I definitely see what both of you are saying. I see how Kaushik differed on the side of me and Darshan, but it makes sense. And what he said made sense because the reasons he put back behind it, um, definitely made up for what he said. So our last scenario that we have today is one of the most fundamental scenarios in all of morals and ethics, and you guys might have heard of it before. A runaway trolley is heading down the tracks towards five workmen who will be killed if the trolley proceeds to present its course. Molly is on the footbridge over the tracks in between the approaching trolley and the five workmen. Next to her on this footbridge is a stranger who happens to be very large. So there are two scenarios in this. So either you can change the if she does nothing, the trolley will proceed, causing deaths of five workmen. The only way to save the lives of these workmen is to push the stranger off the bridge and onto the tracks below, where the large body will stop the trolley, causing his death. So what do you guys think? Should Molly push the stranger onto the tracks in order to save the five workmen?
So for this scenario, again, we're dealing with two very difficult options. One option, you do nothing, the trolley, the train goes how it is and kills five people. And the second option, you actively kill another person to save the lives of five other people by stopping the train. So here there's two options where one, you indirectly contribute to the death of five people, and the other option is where you directly contribute to the death of one person. And I feel like in this scenario, even though it may be a crime what you're doing, if you directly cause the death of one person to save five people, I feel like that would be the better option because um, saving five people have a greater impact on society than one person, and they have they have bigger families, they have more people to take care of than that one person. So I feel like if you're looking at the greater impact on society, saving five people would be better than saving one person.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go with Darshan's side on this. I would rather cause grief in one family than five. I would rather cause grief in no families at all. But if I had the option to pick between causing grief in one family over five families, I would pick one family because even though what I'm doing is a crime, I'm still saving five future generations. I'm still saving five more families from grief and all of that. So yeah, I would definitely push the person on, even though it's a crime, I feel like I'm doing a better good for society because it's saving five more people, five more impactful, ripples in society. So how about you, Kaushik?
I definitely am on the side with you guys. I think right here it's not a matter of which person you value more, but rather how many people you can save. And if I can directly cause the death of one individual to save five, I think the idea of saving five individuals definitely balances out that one death. But I can certainly see why people may agree with not throwing that person at all and indirectly killing those five individuals, because if you were to let those five individuals die, you yourself would not be you wouldn't be exactly charged against it. Like if you threw that one individual off the train and prevent those five people from dying, you may be reported for a crime or something. Like you could have charges against you. So I think that's why people may be may sort of agree with that idea. But if you were to actually go about killing that person, what if someone reports you, because you were directly responsible for that death? but you were indirectly responsible for killing those 5 individuals. So that's like a strange dilemma. But if I were in the scenario, I would listen to my heart and definitely throw that one individual off the tracks and save those 5 individuals. Yeah.
But well said, Kaushik. I feel like that's the most popular answer for this trolley problem, where you're killing one person to save five. But I don't know. People have different opinions. Like we said before, this is all opinion based. None of us have cruel intentions here. We're just trying to see what the best option is by discussing these moral ethics and philosophy based problems. Well, so today that's going to be it for our podcast. We'd like to thank everyone that joined us here today and listened to our discussions over these scenarios. We would also like to thank Kaushik for joining us today. Do you have any last words before we cut off?
Yeah, I'd like to thank Darshan and Tejesh for having me, and I'd like to thank the IFPWD for being the conductors for this podcast. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed hearing your perspectives on these moral dilemmas, and I like the fact that we were touching upon them because it gives us a sense of what we would do if we were actually in these scenarios. So they're very thought provoking, and it led to a very insightful discussion. So thank you, guys.
Tejesh, you have any other words?
Yeah, as Kaushik said before, it's always good to discuss morals and ethical scenarios because, you never know when you will be in one of those scenarios. And in life, there's always unpredictable situations where you come across where you do have to make difficult decisions and choose the lesser of the worst options. There might be two bad options, but you have to choose the one that, is less evil. So like that, it's good to discuss these insightful scenarios and have a nice discussion on it.
Yep, I agree. Talking about these will definitely help us in the future when we're faced with scenarios similar to these where we have to make difficult moral decisions. But yeah, that's it for today, everybody. Thank you for joining. We will try to notify you when we're having another episode of our podcast, probably in a few weeks. But for that, that's it for today. Thank you for joining. Goodbye.
Bye, everybody.